council. I'll begin with the open public meeting statement. Notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act by 1, posting a copy of the agenda on the bulletin board at the municipal building and on the township website. 2, filing a copy of the agenda in the office of the township clerk at the municipal building. 3, forwarding a copy of the agenda to the central record in the Burlington County Times. And 4, forwarding written notice to each person who has requested copies of the regular meeting schedule. All the above posting, filing, and mailing have taken place on the 12th of July, 2013. Would you all rise for the flag salute, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Beanstalk?
Here.
Mr. Pace?
Here.
Mr. Watson?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Ballamy?
Here.
Mayor Checkott?
Here. All right, next item is communications, scheduling matter, council agenda presentation, for any amendments to the agenda. Let's see here, scheduling items, June 22nd, 2013 is the Medford night at the Pine Barrens Festival at Holy Eucharist Church. And actually this year we're for Medford, we're honoring Robert Egan, who is the president of Medford Celebrates Foundation, along with the other members of Medford Celebrates, for their community service and fundraising and bringing the fireworks back to Medford. And August 6, 2013 is the next township meeting at the Public Safety Building, 7:30 p.m. Anything else, Mr. Manager?
No.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on to the minutes. Approval of the June 18th, 2013 regular meeting minutes and the June 18th, 2013 executive meeting minutes. Has everybody had an opportunity to review those minutes?
Yes,
Any additions, corrections, deletions?
there was one item on the executive session minutes that I don't think should be released to the public.
Didn't we redact?
Yes, we redacted it. I seen that.
We sent around a redacted copy and removed that. So, any other?
I was not at that meeting, so I'm staying.
Okay. If not, can I have a motion to approve the June 18th, 2013 regular and executive meeting minutes?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the manager.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item is from last meeting, we advised council regarding our,
Chris, hold
yes.
on. One more thing. My mistake. I wanted to note that one of our Boy Scouts is here from Troop 26, attending tonight, Ethan Kane. Ethan, why don't you stand up for his Citizenship Merit Badge, and I believe, are you Dave? Dave Birmingham? And your son, his name is?
David is one.
David. David is here for his Citizens Merit Badge as well. Thank you, gentlemen. I'm sorry.
that's fine. The township's joint insurance is a member of the Burlington County Joint Insurance Fund, and renewal is due to expire at the end of the year. However, we have to make notice by the middle of August. At the last meeting, council asked for a presentation from our current TPA provider, and John and Paul are here tonight to give a brief presentation to council regarding the gym.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is John McCrude, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Hardenberg Insurance. We're located in Marlton. We serve as the risk manager for the township. We served as the risk manager from 1994 through 2006. We were appointed in 2011. And with me tonight, I'm going to make a presentation as Paul Viola. Paul's the Executive Vice President and Executive Director of the Burlington County Joint Insurance Fund. As Chris said, your membership is up for its 3-year renewal this year. As risk manager, some of the things that we do is to make sure that all the facilities in the township create a safe workplace. We work with the safety committees to assure that The workplaces are safe, to make sure that you receive all the dollars that you can that are available through the Joint Insurance Fund. We work with the township on various policies and procedures and any coverages that the Joint Insurance Fund may not provide. We work to make sure you have the policies to ensure that you're covered in the event of any claims. In addition, we make sure that you get all the services that are provided by the Joint Insurance Fund. If you have claims issues, we work for those matters as well. So we're pretty much your liaison between all of the members of the township and the Burlington County Joint Insurance Fund. So with that said, I think it's important that you get a brief presentation from Paul so that you can make a decision on the upcoming renewal. Paul?
Thank you, John. Good evening, and thank you for your time this evening. In addition to being the Executive Director of the Burlington County Municipal Joint Insurance Fund, I'm also a Medford resident. I live down on Jackson Road and been a resident for 10 years, so very, very important to me, too, that the town that I live in has the correct insurance coverage and that it's competitive, because I am a taxpayer as well. All of you have received a copy of the materials that I want to discuss this evening, and I promise I won't take up a lot of your time because I know you have a very busy agenda. But if you do have the presentation piece in front of you, if I may just walk through it rather quickly, and then I'll be available to answer questions for you. You know, just looking at page 2 of the presentation, I want to make sure everyone understands that the Joint Insurance Fund is not an insurance company. We're a quasi-municipal agency formed under Title 48, which means that we must adhere to rules and regulations promulgated by the Department of Banking and Insurance. We're also regulated by the Department of Community Affairs. So everything that we do has to pass muster with the regulators up in Trenton, and we adhere to those regulations very closely for the protection of our members. Looking at page 3, what makes us different from other GIFs and from insurance programs are some of the factors that I want to go over with you. You'll see them listed on page 3, but to go into detail, looking at page 4, you'll see that you're sharing risk in the Joint Insurance Fund with your neighbors here in Burlington County. Most of the towns in Burlington County are members of the Burlington County Municipal Joint Insurance Fund. You can see who they are. We'll talk about how important that is as I move through the presentation. Page 5 talks about the member ownership and the local control. The decisions that are made in this joint insurance fund are really driven by the members themselves. As you know, you have a representative, fund commissioner, and Kathy, who attends the monthly meetings. As a matter of fact, she's chair of the joint insurance fund this year. And we have monthly meetings where we discuss the business at hand. We review the finances, review the bill list, just like we do at your council meetings. Every penny that's spent by the joint insurance fund is reviewed by the executive committee of the joint insurance fund. The JIF also provides built-in networking opportunities. Kathy, Chris can reach out to other municipalities in Burlington County through their networking with the joint insurance fund when there are issues that arise, risk issues that affect all the towns. And it really benefits Medford Township to be able to have a path for that type of networking opportunity. What's also important about the fact that we're all in this joint insurance fund together is the fact that all the members of the JIF know each other, and we make a combined commitment to management of risk and to claims management as well. Looking at page 6, I think another important feature of the joint insurance fund here in Burlington County is that all of our professionals are local. They're all located here in southern New Jersey. They're very easy to access. Chris, or the police chief, or Kathy have issues, we're right here. We're in the county, we're very nearby, so that providing service happens very quickly and very expediently. Page 7 talks about the specialized program. The Joint Insurance Fund is unique because we don't insure a body shop today, manufacturer tomorrow, or trucking organization the next day. All we do is municipal government, and it's focused on municipal government here in Burlington County. So we are very, very focused on what we do, and we really do assist our members in meeting a lot of the compliance requirements that are put out by POSHA, the DEP, the EPA, and others. And the access to this information is very critical because a lot of these organizations can fine Medford Township for being out of compliance. When you go, folks have had a visit from POSHA as an example, If there are recommendations that come out of that visit, we come out immediately, help you address those recommendations, and make sure that we guide you through that entire process. Looking at page 8, I think another key component of the Joint Insurance Fund is our specialized programs. All the training that we conduct is held here in Burlington County. As a matter of fact, a lot of the trainings that we provide are held for your employees right here in town so that they don't have to leave. We've also started to provide webinars, we provide online training, so that again, we know that your staff time is valuable, and we try to make it very, very easy for you to access these training programs. Page 9 also talks about some of the additional specialized programs that we offer. We provide a safety budget to the town to assist you in purchasing the equipment or additional training that may be required. We have a safety incentive program. These programs on a combined basis have probably returned $10,000 to Medford Township just in the course of the past year alone. The Employment Practices Liability Helpline, it's a great opportunity to pick up the phone, not have to talk to an attorney for $350 an hour, but on our nickel, be able to discuss any personnel issues that might come up and get some guidance that could help Chris, for example, when he starts to have discussions with your own attorney. The elected officials training, I know you folks received a $1,500 discount on your bill this year. We hold training once a year to alert you folks to the risks that you face in running a municipality. We also provide training for your managers and supervisors, focusing on the areas of employment practices liability. That's discrimination in the workplace, harassment, hostile work environment, things of that nature, to try and make sure that your managers and supervisors understand the important role that they play in managing these areas. And we also provide specific training for your police officers and your police chiefs. Looking at page 10, we also go beyond safety. We talk about risk management, managing risk, giving you guidance. There are times when your department heads might be considering a new activity. Skate park is one of those. We walk you through that entire process. As a matter of fact, we had a visit with your folks just this week to talk about the Medford Skate Park, to offer some ideas and suggestions to better manage that operation to reduce the potential risk to Medford Township. On page 10, you'll also see about halfway down the page the thing called the TULIP program. Very, very valuable program. There are times when outside organizations want to use Medford Township facilities, or residents want to use the facilities. Obviously, if something happens, if somebody is injured there, it's not necessarily Medford Township's fault. So we guide you through that process to make sure that you can get a certificate of insurance from them. When they don't have insurance, they can go right up on a website for about $100. They can get a $1 million liability policy that protects them and protects the town for that particular activity. So again, it's another way of risk mitigation. Looking at page 11, try as we may, we can't prevent every claim from occurring, but we do manage claims when they do occur. They're thoroughly investigated, reviewed by peers, and lessons are learned. And I think that's very important. When the monthly meetings are held, we go into an executive session, we talk about the types of accidents that may be occurring in other municipalities within the county. And you walk away with some ideas, gee, are we doing that? And how are we doing it? And how can we do it more safely? So that's a very important aspect of the Joint Insurance Fund. Our adjusters are highly experienced. They focus on municipalities, types of claims. We limit their caseloads. We want to make sure that our adjusters don't have 300 files on their desk. We make sure that they're well below the industry average so that they can pay particular attention to your claims. We also take a very hard look at medical costs. We know that drives our budget. As you know, it drives your budget on your health insurance. Well, workers' compensation is a big part of our budget. Medical costs are a big component of workers' compensation. So we have some very specific programs in workers' compensation to control those costs. We also monitor your fellow members' performance. We recognize that throwing money at claims is not a way to improve a risk. When we see a member that's starting to run a fever with claims, we don't just raise their rates. We come out, we review where the claims are coming from, we have a discussion with them, we implement programs to, again, try and back off on those claims. And it pays off, because when you see when I go through my presentation, you can see what our budget history looks like. Matter of fact, we're just getting some preliminary budget estimates for next year. Our actuary tells us that we don't have to raise our loss funding again next year, which is, I think, phenomenal when you consider the increasing cost of claims. Page 12 just talks about coverage. The coverage that is provided by the Joint Insurance Fund is really something that we take pride in. We run towards claims, we don't run away from claims. When Medford Township is sued, or when one of your employees is injured, we make sure that they get the best possible care. We also make sure that we get the best possible attorneys to defend claims against Medford Township. And again, lessons are learned from these claims that we share. Page 13 talks about accountability. We have a high level of accountability in the Joint Insurance Fund. Through the monthly meetings, there's that bill review process. My office and the other professionals in the Joint Insurance Fund are reviewed on an annual basis for our performance and also for the fees that we charge. There's also an excellent assessment strategy. In other words, when we take our budget to the JIF, we allocate it to different members, we take a look at your claims history. We make sure that members that are performing well get very low rate increases. As a matter of fact, Medford Township last year had about a 1% rate increase, even though inflation was pushing up some of our costs. Taking a look at page 14, you'll see our budget history. It's single digit. I think that if your health insurance program run a single-digit budget over the years, I think you'd be very pleased with that. You can see that our cost control has effectively managed our budget history. And then page 15 just shows an example, and I know that your risk manager at Hardenberg also gave you some examples, but we are competitive. We had one member who left the JIF several years ago. They were paying about $50,000 a year. By the time they left that insurance company, their premium had jumped up almost double. So we know that we continue to be competitive. When they came back into the JIF, they came in just about where they were paying when they left off. Page 16 talks about our dividends. Every penny that the JIF does not pay out in claims is returned to the membership. There's no profit in the Joint Insurance Fund. We have returned over $5 million in dividends to Burlington County municipalities. Medford Township has received almost $1.25 million worth of dividends. Last year we received almost $100,000, and that's what you've been averaging the past few years, about $100,000 in dividends. Page 17, very important, talks about our financial stability. We have the money in the bank to pay your claims. We're going to be here to pay your claims 10 years from now. We know that it takes several years for claims to move through the legal system or through the workers' compensation system. We set aside reserves to pay those claims to make sure that the money is going to be there. Right now, we have over $11 million of cash on hand, over $5.5 million of surplus, and we're very judicious in how we distribute that surplus because if we ever do have a rainy day, we've got the money in the bank to take care of that. Finally, I want to compare us to other joint insurance funds. I know that your RMC has talked to you about the fact that there are other JIFs in the state. Some things you need to understand is you won't be sharing risk with members in Burlington County with other municipalities. These JIFs accept members from the state of New Jersey, mostly up in northern New Jersey. You have little in common with those other JIFs. There's very limited member input and oversight in those joint insurance funds. All the professionals in those JIFs are from North Jersey, Bergen County, Essex County, etc. Membership meetings are held in North Jersey. The training opportunities are held out of county. And their financial stability is something that you need to take a close look at too. They do not have the cash on hand that we have, nor the surplus that we have to back them up. As a matter of fact, rather than paying dividends, some of these JIFs have actually come back to the membership and says, you owe us more money because we had more claims than we budgeted for. And I attribute that to our focus on loss prevention and risk management. So the bottom line on page 19, ask yourself, who am I sharing risk with? Who's going to defend my claims? Who do I call for help? And will they be here in 10 years? I can tell you that the Burlington County Joint Insurance Fund is here for you. We've been here for you. Hopefully that you will find when it comes time to make your decision that we provide the value that Medford Township deserves. At the back of my presentation, you'll see what we call a member update. There's some information there that shows you some of the benefits that you received in terms of dollars and cents from the Joint Insurance Fund. Talks about the dividends that have been paid. Some of the people that work in town here to help make your program successful. And on a final note, I'm very hopeful that you will make a decision when the time comes to renew your membership with the Burlington County Municipal Joint Insurance Fund. But I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions? I have a couple of questions. What's the total premiums that the JIP collects during the course of their, let's say 2012?
From all members,
Yeah.
it's about $12 million.
All right, so if I look at what we've got cash on hand, 3/31/2013, about $11 million. So how are premiums collected?
Premiums are billed to each member in December.
Okay.
There's a payment due in February, and a payment due in August.
All right, so you would have collected 2/3 by
Yes.
plus you've got a reserve.
Yes.
Okay. How do you find because basically what we're providing here is workers, I guess what workers' comp, PNC, coverage.
Liability, police liability, automobile liability.
How do you find the present state of the insurance market?
It's in turmoil right now. To be honest with you, the hurricane has caused a lot of the property insurance companies to really tighten up their underwriting. They've raised rates pretty significantly. Just speaking to John McGruder before I came in here today, good risks are receiving rate increases in the range of 8 to 10%. Those businesses, or risks as we call them in the business, that have not been performing well often find themselves in the assigned risk plan or surplus lines markets with significantly higher premiums. As far as the insurance market for municipal government, insurance companies are not keen on writing workers' compensation. They're concerned about the police and firefighter exposure. So there are very few, if any, markets. If you do find an insurance company wants to write insurance for a municipality, they're going to require a very high retention where you would pay, let's say, the first $500,000 of every claim.
So I guess you characterize it as a hard market right now?
It's firm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm seeing as well.
I had a question, actually. The letter that we received from Hardenberg, and unfortunately, I have no access to Wi-Fi right now. Kind of freaking out, going on my documents. This is a case we made against the Paperless Society. But you had mentioned essentially our risk evaluation, where we were rated now. I guess last year, I want to say we were around 945,000. There we go. This year, so for 2013, we were assessed at 944. The difference essentially was about 110,000, as I recall. And the comment was made that if we were to leave the JIF and attempt to, I guess, attain policies in other coverage areas, that would exceed $110,000. Can I get
Yes,
some?
I'll explain that to you.
Yeah, please.
Basically, what Bonnie and Rick tried to do is explain to you that if you did go out to buy, let's say, insurance in the outside market, workers' compensation coverage would not be obtainable from a standard insurance company. You'd have to go into what the state calls its assigned risk plan, which means they charge standard rates. The premium for your organization would run over $800,000. That would leave about I'm rounding numbers, about $150,000 to buy your public officials liability, your police professional liability, your street and roads liability, and all your fire insurance and coverage on all your vehicles and equipment. And basically, that just wouldn't happen at that premium.
I mean, it seems like it's an obvious benefit now. The other thing is, I saw two dates. I saw August 15th as one of the dates where I think you were asking us to respond by. But then in a letter from Hardenberg, I saw that, okay, we have to complete it by October 1st, so then we have to begin the process by July 24th. So essentially, your request to hear from us sooner, that makes sense because of the lag. And it's not just, right, there's actually some paperwork involved. All right.
Any other questions? No? You have questions?
Well, while they're here, I just want to bring up the skate park that Paul mentioned. We did have a meeting yesterday, and the skate park, when it was rebuilt under the current format, was designed to be an unsupervised facility. We did all the proper ordinances and resolutions to do such. However, there's still enforcement that is involved. It's becoming more and more evident that the users are not following the rules. The skaters are supposed to be certain days, the bikers certain days. They're supposed to have safety equipment. Yesterday, we found a modified piece of equipment that somebody built and brought it there. So after we kind of went through a vetting process, if it doesn't change, it's going to be closed. And we're also considering a registry. Our parents will have to come in and sign for the rules and regs and create a database of users. And we're going to use bands, and they'll get a band. And any violation, if they signed and during an enforcement round, we find out that they signed off, it's going to be 30 days out, 3 months out, and a year. And then after that, we'll decide whether they should even be in the facility. We're trying to talk to the kids. I understand they don't get it. They don't understand the liability the township could incur by somebody getting hurt. But one incident there could shut that park down. One incident could pay out more than it paid to build the park. And so it's we're trying to figure out the best way to do it, but the consensus is to close it for a period of time if the message doesn't get out there.
And I'm taking it, it's not just a matter of a hold harmless.
No, in fact, that was not recommended, because that puts more of a duty back to us, which the more we do, we shift back from unsupervised to supervised. So we're trying to find that balance, because we do not have the staff to have somebody sitting there all day. But we're also stepping up the inspections. Usually the GIF requires monthly and or quarterly facility inspections. That one's getting it weekly now. It's closed on Mondays, and every Monday will be an inspection. It's because we've, so it's a great facility, but it's a very risky sport, and we have to be cognizant. We haven't had, luckily we haven't had any incidents that have come to our level. That doesn't say they're not happening out there. But we have to be prepared for that one that does come to us. And so, just so council's aware of that's the next step is if we don't see some changes by the users. And we'll get the information out. We've talked to Larry McDonald, who posts on his Facebook page. I'm asking those who have Facebook pages here, that please put that information out. We'll put it out any way we can. But if it doesn't, if we don't see some change in the behavior, so to speak, or the compliance, I should say, not behavior, we're going to have to shut it down and send a message that way. So, just so council's aware of it.
We had lengthy discussions before the park even opened up about what it meant to be a park that's monitored and one that's not. And at that time, the five of us agreed that if it started to get out of hand, the simplest thing, the thing that made most sense was just close it. And you get people's attention that way. Unfortunately, you can't close it forever. So it has to be, I say has to be, it needs to be open. Without going to a supervised facility, I would assume that we're all still on the same page of closing it is absolutely the way to go if we can't get a handle on it with the measures which you mentioned.
I mean, again, I having an 11-year-old, I understand it's not cool to wear equipment. I get that, but it's not, when you get hurt, it's not cool either, because you're going to be feeling it. And so, we'll try to get the message out the best we can. But the registry would hopefully, like I said, there's a sign out there, we're going to put another sign for the rules, and just try to reinforce them any way we can.
I could go stand there with equipment on, and that would make it cool or equipment. Just a thought.
Any other questions for Paul? No. All right, thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next is hazard mitigation planning process. Jeff Wagner, Lieutenant Wagner, our emergency management coordinator, is here to give a brief overview of the hazard mitigation planning process. and the projects that the town has been involved with, so council is familiar with the process.
That was hazard mitigation right there. Took care of tripping hazard. I'm going to be very brief. We're in the process of working with the county on a all hazards mitigation plan. We originally joined the county back in 2006 for the first plan, and that was a result of federal legislation, DMA 2000, that required that any town, municipality, state have a mitigation plan should they, in the future, want to seek any FEMA funding for mitigation projects, flood projects, et cetera, et cetera. We were fortunate that they did allow, rather than us having to have our own individual plan, that we could join with the county and develop a plan in concert with them. The county received funding back at that time for the initial plan. The plan is good for 5 years. We're now up for recertification in November to develop a new updated plan. So we started about 4 months ago working with the county. They hired a vendor that's coming in and supporting the project. And since that time, I've attended several meetings. I've met with staff within the township and have been working on that plan. What is hazard mitigation? Essentially, just what I did there. Identify hazard, come up with an action plan, and then implement that plan. What we've been looking at is what are the hazards that Medford Township is susceptible to. And we only are looking at natural hazards. So primarily in Medford, we're looking at flooding, wildfires, severe storms like the wind storms that we've had in the past, severe winter storms, hurricanes, primarily those items. Drought is on the list, landslides we don't really have. So we look at those hazards, see how we're going to be affected, how our infrastructure is going to be affected. And that's not just our, meaning the township's infrastructure, but also our residents, our businesses. What could one of those storms do to them? We then take those hazards and see what we can do about it. Something like flooding, we're currently, from our old plan, we're working with 2 residences on, New Freedom Road, and as well as Camp Darkwaters for elevation projects to raise 2 of the houses and raise the dining hall at Camp Darkwaters. I think we've discussed that briefly before, talked with the manager. It's a matching grant that that we as the township apply for. However, the agreement with those homeowners and the camp is they're responsible for all court costs beyond what FEMA may cover. So that's called the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. So we're working with them essentially for the township. It helps us in that every time it rains, I don't have to worry about dealing with that particular area, because that is the first area that floods in Medford Township is New Freedom Road at the bridge. It's the lowest area in the township. And those costs, both those homeowners and the camp, have been quite significant over the years. So we're working with them to try to mitigate that risk to their property and even potential risk to their life to be able to raise those properties. Because we've been out there, I believe 2 years ago, there was one night we got less than 2 inches of rain, and for some unknown reason, it flooded, and when one resident woke up in the morning, his house was completely surrounded by water. So we're certainly trying to lessen the possibility of that happening and working with those homeowners. The only way we can get and be eligible for money like that is by having a hazard mitigation plan. So we work with Public Works, Emergency Management, Police, Fire, the planning office. I've met with them to identify and make sure that we're doing everything as development comes along to minimize risk to those developments, that we're not building houses in the floodplain. I will say I've been working with some other towns and looking at our floodplain ordinance. It's right where it needs to be. It takes into account those issues, and that's what we're looking at with this plan. Keep in mind, I stand up here, it's 100 and some degrees today, or feels like 100 and some degrees. We're not thinking about flooding 2 weeks ago. That's all I was thinking about was flooding. But we're not immune to it. Just looking through, since we had the last plan approved, so in the last 5 years alone, we've
experienced 7 presidential declared disasters in Medford Township. Hurricanes, snowstorms, severe storms in 2010 that resulted in flooding, severe windstorm. So we're not, we're not exempt from it. It happens. We have a lot of experience, I'll tell you that. And we're very good at doing our paperwork, but it's something that we need to, we prepare very well, which is part of emergency management. We respond, I think, extremely well in this township. We do a great job at recovery. The thing that most people struggle with is that mitigation part of emergency management, and that's why we're trying to make sure that we're up to speed with that. We've done a nice job. I think this grant that we applied for earlier this year, or I'm sorry, we put in a letter of intent to potentially apply for these homes, is a good start to continuing our mitigation process. Over the years, we've done several items. We've tried to improve our public input, our public education about some of the hazards. Coming up in this new plan, we're certainly going to look to continue to identify repetitive flooded properties and take actions to mediate or mitigate those with property owners, as well as looking at the wildfire hazard and how we can work with property owners. We talked last year, we came up with a wildfire plan, and how we can further implement that to put in evacuation routes to continue to educate our residents on building that defensible area around their house. Because again, we've seen the flood, we've gotten inundated with water. It's just a matter of time when we look at history before we end up with a serious wildfire in this area. And we continue to look at route alerting, working with the NIXL, the Global Connect, items like that. Yeah, anything that we put in the plan is not a have-to-do kind of thing. It's items that we're looking at, we're considering, and the plan is set on if funding becomes available, and that's not necessarily funding from within. It could be, local funding, it could be capital funding, but most importantly, it would be making us eligible for that FEMA hazard mitigation funding, repetitive flood or severe repetitive flood funding, and things like that. So it's an important process. We're in the middle of the process now. I wanted to bring it to council's attention because from this point forward, we'll have a meeting at the end of this month to really finalize our local annex, because we'll have our own little annex within this larger county plan. It's a 2-volume plan that will come out, and one will cover the entire county in generality, and the second will be each town's individual annex. So I just want to make everyone aware of it, including the public, that if somebody has an idea that, whether it be council or a resident, that they think may be an idea for a mitigation project, please let me know, council, let the manager know, and I'm sure he'll forward it right to me. But it's important, I don't know everything. So we need everybody's input to make sure that we cover the possibilities. And if it's something that would be eligible, we'll put it in the plan, and that way we're set for the next 5 years. Once that plan's drafted, hopefully in August, it'll have some final reviews, and I'll probably be back before you in October, I hope, where we'll need to formally adopt that by resolution. And it'll have been, by that point in time, it will have been approved by FEMA, and in order for us to be covered by it, council, at your discretion, will need to approve that by resolution. Any questions? Great. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item, the former Beauregard Lodge liquor license. The liquor license associated with the site has reverted back to the township. The state declares the license dead, and therefore the town now has a license available to put out to auction or bid. Obviously, we're halfway through the year, and I'm already starting to look at next year's budgetary process. So I'm looking for revenues, and I would like council to consider authorizing staff to prepare to go out to bid. Council would have to set a bid threshold. The most recent liquor licenses in the county were the Morristown Mall. I do not think you're going to get $1 million for a license in Medford. We do not have a Prius, we do not have a mall. That's a regional attraction. And I think the last license in Medford was $450,000. $4.25. So,
Yeah, how long was it there?
I don't know the
Wow.
year.
This was the last one we bought.
Like what, 2003?
Probably looking.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say,
Six or
wasn't
seven.
the Samos license was considerably more than,
That was 2003.
He bought two in 2003.
So, you know, the number, you know, so council needs to decide where it wants to start. You know, the $500,000, it could be 750. If you miss the mark, obviously there's one available, so if there's a lot of interest, it could drive up, no matter where you start, it could drive that up. But
You
I
just need
think,
to set a minimum bid.
yeah, you need to set a minimum, and I just think it's important, obviously, it's a potential opportunity for the township. There's been a lot of talk and chatter about businesses and things happening in Medford, and, you know, we're seeing, not just businesses talking about coming here. I am aware that some of the current existing businesses are looking at either moving to bigger facilities or knocking down existing facilities and rebuilding under new formats that they're now using statewide. So I think it's important that you know, we keep the momentum you generated in some of the economic development things we talked about and we put into place. And we're going to talk about one later on, the abatement and exemption. So it's just another step in that process.
With regards to going out to bid, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't release that one for bid.
No reason. Just gotta set a
We just
minimum.
need to figure out.
Roughly, how long would the process take if from start to finish, days, weeks, months?
Could take several months. I mean, we're, you know,
So we miss if we set a bid threshold and it's too high and nobody bids.
If no one bids, you can always put it out to bid again.
you put it back out to bid, you would reduce it.
So do we have time to do it twice this year? If we did it once and we missed, we'll do it again and still have it done
Probably.
this year or next year.
It's really just a matter of putting the package together and getting it on the street for the required period of time. And, you know, but then once they come in and vetting it, you know,
It's significant amount of time.
probably
Probably 3 months.
3 months. Yeah,
It has to go through the normal vetting
But that's-
process.
The vetting process really doesn't impact, once
that is-
successful or not successful upon, you know, receiving a bid, that vetting process, if it fails, getting it back out to bid for a lower or higher number really is, you know, that timeframe is, you know.
I think
minimal.
the vetting process assumes we hit the minimum bid and above. If no bids come in, it's a dead issue at that point.
Right, then we just go back out.
You adjust the
for-
number and you go back
Right,
out.
exactly. So there's really no,
Mhm.
you know, obviously the vetting process takes time before the license is issued. That's the time constraint, not necessarily the bidding process.
So, you know, again, if council wants to think about it for the next meeting, if you want us to see if we can get a little more data on some other licenses that have gone out in the area. The most recent, again, was Morristown that I'm aware of.
Can we start putting together the package and fill in the number later?
Yep.
Why don't we do that?
Yes. All right, so we'll prepare everything with the exception of the number.
Yeah, if you could get other data for more recent than 2003, but more similar to veterans.
No one went in our world that 3 years ago. I think it was 500,000.
Not that I want to leave money on the table, but the potential does exist that additional licenses may or may not come available in Medford. So if we put it out for $500,000 and, you know, the final bid comes in at 6, we put out the next one at 6 or 7 and go from there.
Well, you'll get an idea of the interest, because right now only one's available.
Exactly.
If anything, this having one available is a better opportunity in terms
Well,
of
and again,
especially researchers.
Okay, so we'll start preparing the docs and we'll do a little more, to see what we can get some more. Okay, next item is the during the budget process, I advised council there were existing bonds, and initially we were gonna look at 2007 to 2010, but Kathy actually went back as far as 1992 to look at bonds. And what happens is towns authorize bonding, they do projects, and they may not, they don't close them out. So there's funding still sitting there that you could potentially close out. There's funding that was earmarked for things that priorities changed and they didn't get done. So there are different reasons why some of the funding never got done. But you all as taxpayers have been paying for a lot of this through the debt service. So you essentially are paying something and you have nothing.
Kind of like the state was doing last year when we found 600 million.
So what I wanted to do as part of this review is the town has needs. We still have needs, and I know council has concerns about how we borrow and things like that. So what I wanted to do is go through this, talk to the staff about things that were previously approved that we already had existing money for, that we could move ahead with. Things that we have now on our radar that we didn't know at the time. For example, I don't know if people have noticed, but we have filters over the ductwork in this building. The system, there's an issue with this system, and this ductwork needs to be replaced. And so now that becomes an item that we have to look at and address. There are multiple ways to address it. So what I want to do is tonight we've prepared a list of things that I'm requesting council consider for repurposing. And then there are things that we're going to recommend you can cancel. And what canceling does is it comes in as a revenue, but it will adjust your cap for next year's budgetary process, but at the same time, you're reducing. You can use that revenue to offset what we did this year. We offset that debt increase. And if everybody remembers, we get through to 2018 and manage that our debt comes off like a cliff. And as we try to develop an appropriate borrowing model that works in a sustainable fashion. So tonight after the meeting, or we'll have packets for you. What I'm asking is council review them. Send me any questions you have, and then be prepared to discuss it at the August 6th meeting in more detail. All right? Okay. The next item is the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Council on Affordable Housing, or what was the remnants of the Council on Affordable Housing, continues to send out letters that are contradictory regarding the recent decision that the state can take funds that have not been expended or otherwise committed.
$0.
Yeah.
They keep threatening to take
So
$0.
Medford's letter continues to say, you've spent your money, but, so it's contradicting. We know we've expended our funds. COA is requesting and requiring this certification that the mayor signs off. We're just double checking their numbers with our numbers, to be quite honest. I don't trust them. Just the way the state has handled this, and the fact that this is like the third letter and third or fourth in 30 days.
We've
I
already
think it's a form letter.
approval for the disbursement of the funds.
Yeah, so-
It's a computer generated.
So I just wanted council to be aware, we did get another letter. This one has a certification. As soon as we confirm the numbers that we know.
I have a call into them, I'm just waiting for them to call back.
We'll have the mayor execute that and be done with it, hopefully. It's due August 2nd. Any questions on that? All right. The next item, posted website information. We recently had a resident raise a concern about the township's online payment system for tax and utility billing known as WIP, as well as the payment history information, alleging it's a privacy violation. In consultation with the Government Records Council, they advise that the posting of information to the website is a policy decision and not one for them. But in pushing them, at the end of the day, is it a public record or not? Yes, it is a public record. I've asked most of my colleagues statewide, most of them put this information, it's available. So the real question the person's asking does Oprah, do people have to file an Oprah request to get information? The town shouldn't be able to just put the information out there. Our position is no, people want us to be transparent. This council's talked about a suggestion about creating a virtual public records library. Well, that would kill that idea, so to speak. So this would have statewide, in my opinion, statewide ramifications, because most towns are pushing information that's not it's recommended you put out there, but there's no law saying you put it out there. But when you go to the Government Records Council exemption, they're all public records.
Well, there's a software issue with this too, where basically, it's, in order for us to allow for electronic payment.
The admin system does not allow toggling, so a resident can't say, I don't want it on there, and you can't just switch that property off. It's all or none, and we do have a lot of residents who choose to use the electronic.
Sure.
It's not just electronic transfer fund, it's credit cards. They choose to use credit cards to pay the township, and obviously, from a collection and standpoint, we want the collection dollars coming in, right? So if this were to prevail, that goes away, that service to the residents goes away too. So I wanted to bring it to council's attention. It is a policy decision, but, at the end of the day, these are all public records.
I don't have any desire to change that policy.
Mr. Norman, the only thing I can tell you is when you buy a property and you file the deed with the county clerk's office, your deed is on file, you can look on it. County clerk's.
Mr. Norman, the only question that I have as it relates to this issue is why, like you said, the Government Record Council says it's a government record, it's a policy decision. Do you have to file an Oprah request? Do we open ourselves up for a counter argument that says, well, if I don't have to file an Oprah request and it's a public record, you have to make it available in the same fashion? Everything within the township has to be online and available to the public. That's my only concern.
I
I
can't.
think that's a little ridiculous, but we do live in the state of New Jersey. We live in a litigious society, and I think that's the first thing you're going to do.
I can't speak legally, practically speaking. We are allowed to resource any way we feel fit within our budgetary means. So if the town decides it's going to provide curbside snow plowing within this part of the town because of the kids walk there, to school, and that's a policy decision, but we don't do it over here, you're allowed to appropriately resource. My position would be we're appropriately resourcing the information we're making available online, just like we talked about this public virtual library. We're not gonna put everything out there, but we're gonna put a lot once we do it, because the burden on staff right now, but the law still prevails. People have a right to file that open public record.
Certainly, it's on doing it.
So, hopefully that will change the more public entities are making available information out there. But, but if we go down this path with this particular inquiry and concern, one, you're gonna lose that service of residents and property owners being able to pay electronically. And many of them are, we're moving, society is moving more in that direction. And that's just another value-added service that the town provides at I think the system costs $2,500. So that was a value add for very minimal dollars for the community to be able to transact business with its government without having to physically come in the building, for those who still choose to do that. We get a lot of inquiries through mortgage companies. You'd be surprised, mortgage companies want to know that they paid their bill, so they contact the tax office to get a list of their properties. Well, this has shifted that burden. Go online and do it. Why take the staff's time away for to double check that you made a payment?
That's a sound right.
So, anyway, that's kind of where we're at, and if council wants to entertain it, if not, I'll just advise that, position, it's matter. Right now, anybody can go on the New Jersey Association of County Tax Boards website and look up property information. It doesn't have the history of the last few payments, but
It's essentially the same information.
yeah, your property tax information has a long time in public domain.
And it should be. If you're not paying your taxes, I'm covering your end, so.
That's the issue. If you want to sit on it for a meeting and think about it,
I don't think we should change it. I'm just trying to think if there's a way we can lessen,
all on top of.
lessen the amount of information, and I think that's what the issue is.
Right, it sounds like there's not.
All the information that is on that site
There's
is
I'm not,
what would be not redactable anyway.
no, I'm not saying redacted, I'm just saying how you characterize certain items.
We have to talk to the vendor and how they manipulate that.
I mean, I know that this specific issue deals with the water and sewer.
It sounded like there wasn't a way to do that though. That it was
No,
all-
I'm not, what I'm saying is, you know, we have a breakdown, we have taxes, interest, penalty, you know, and then whether it's open or not. Now, obviously, you know, whether it's open or not has to stay, because that tells you whether or not it's been paid. Okay, what I'm saying is there's a way you can sort of consolidate the interest and penalty, and,
Having $1 value.
yeah, I mean.
But then you label the fields if you go to do a report.
I thought they said though it was all or nothing. It sounds like they have.
Edmonds is saying, no, you
It's all
can't
about
toggle
in
it.
terms
They
of-
didn't say that they can't manipulate the fields.
You can't turn off a profit.
They might be able to manipulate the fields.
I'm
We
talking
can
about
ask
you just modify the
If
fields.
we lose the payment service, if we don't have the information, you think you can, it just, to
It's
me, it
not-
sounds like
it's-
it's inflexible.
It's
It's
not
not the, you're not gonna lose
the
that.
payment service. I'm talking about if you can sort of characterize the information.
It just, to me, it sounds like it's inflexible.
It's gonna create issues though when it comes to the mortgage companies calling in to check status, the searchers that are doing it for sales of properties.
No, what I'm saying, you have to leave the information whether or not the bill's paid or whether or not it's still outstanding. I'm just talking about in terms of the additional charges that occur when you don't pay. Whether or not we can characterize those differently.
It's all, it's all a public process. If you don't pay and you fail, and you get on the lien list, that's a public process.
It takes a while to get on the list.
But it's, you know, if they send the Oprah form in, they're getting that information.
I'm not, listen, I don't want to change it. I'm just raising the question, whether or not that's a possibility.
Sure, if you want to pay for custom program. I think it's possible.
I don't know the answer.
Well, at this point, I guess, unless we can look at that, there's no change. Is that what I'm
No,
understanding?
you know, I don't want to change anything at this
Right,
point.
okay, so we'll ask the vendor, but I think ultimately, it's not just gonna impact Medford, it's gonna impact the other municipalities that use the
I
city.
mean, it's a valuable service for the residents to be able to go online.
I mean, the League of Municipalities took, you know, very rarely will they take an issue out of one town that it only impacted that town. They sent this one, and I sent it to them, to their attorney, because it has statewide, it has, the idea of what he's proposing has statewide implications.
Right.
So, all right. Next item, approval of a raffle permit for St. Mary Lakes Church on Senior James H. Bell. The date of the proposed raffle is Sunday, December 8th, 2013. There was no negative information that would preclude approval of that application. You want to do all these in one shot?
Well, let's do that and the roadway permit. We can do the EMS and fire together. All right, so do I have a voice vote for approval of raffle permit for St. Mary Lakes Church? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approval's granted.
Okay, the next one is approval of a roadway permit for Taunton Fire Company. The date of the proposed solicitation is Saturday, September 21st, and Sunday, September 22nd, 2013, for a coin drop at Taunton Boulevard and Tucker Road with a rain date of October 5th, 2013.
Do I have a voice vote for approval of roadway permit for the Taunton Fire Company? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Now, before I go through these, there's one clarification for the number 12, approval for Jason Scott. Jason's already a member of the fire. He's also now going to be a member of EMS transfer. So we have approval for Isabella Trudeau, new member EMS, approval for Scott L. Gaffney, new member EMS, approval for Florence M. Jacobs, new member fire, and approval for Jason Scott, new member EMS.
Any of those individuals present?
All right.
For that.
Do EMS and fire applications for the listed individuals. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Okay, just one quick announcement. On June 27th, we had several members graduate from the Burlington County Emergency Services Training Center. Joe Reynolds, Fire Officer 1 from Station 251, Michael Powell, Firefighter 1, Station 251, William Condren, Firefighter 1, Station 251, and Greg Colner, Firefighter 1, Station 252. So I'm going to try to do this more regularly where we announce these graduations and people know that what our volunteers are doing for the community and that now they are all certified.
Are those individuals present?
And that's all I have, Mayor.
All right, next item on the agenda, discussion items. The first item is the rehabilitation and redevelopment zone exemption abatement code. We have some proposed ordinances.
Yes, I provided you with two drafts. So this is specifically in the context of rehabilitation. The one draft only allows for exemption. Exemption is for new improvements. No assessment for 5 years. The other draft allows for exemption and abatement. Abatement takes it a further step where not only it's a reduction in that. So there's two drafts. The town had an existing ordinance, which is codified in section 131-1. It follows the statute that references the 5-year tax abatement statute. This ordinance very much clarifies things and in the context of rehabilitation spells out the different options. So it's really a policy decision for how you wish to proceed. Do you want to go strictly for rehabilitation, whether or not you want to limit it to exemptions, or do you want to go to the full panoply of allowing for exemptions and abatement? And in the context of redevelopment, you have both options that already exist in the existing code.
I mean, I don't have a problem with having the exemption abatement on both. Okay, the rehabilitation and redevelopment areas. And you already have on redevelopment. I guess the question I have as I read this ordinance, I mean, I know we talked about the exemption being, a graduating exemption. So in other words, first year 0, second year.
Well, that's abatement.
That's very
That's
Okay.
abatement. Exemption is strictly, it's residential, it's capped at $25,000. First, but it's just for whatever the improvement is to the existing property, you're exempt for 5 years. The abatement is like you said, the abatement provides 3 different options for abatement, and one of them is no taxes, 20, 40, 60, 80. That's one of the 3 options for abatement, and that's by statute, state statute.
Okay, so we would be exempting,
Well, here's what happens. When you have an application for abatement, the property owner comes in and says, I'd like abatement treatment. You give you the particulars, and from that, you have 3 formula you can apply for abatement. One is the 20, 40, 60, 800. There's 2 other statutory formulas. Certainly, the property owner is going to make his pitch which of the 3 options he wants. The only thing you're constrained by is you have to follow the statute. The statute says it has to be one of the 3 methods.
That's not in here, the abatement options are not in this ordinance.
But the ordinance references the statute.
The ordinance
It references the statute.
So you go to the statute.
Yep. And it's also in code section too. That already exists.
So with an exemption, we can only exempt up to 25,000 on new improvements.
That's for residential.
on residential.
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 That's not, okay.
comes in and makes the request, do we have to grant the application, but we have the discretion to choose one of the three, or can we?
Well, you're limited to one of the three options, but I did include a provision that talked about they have to justify why they need the abatement, so to speak, that they're not just doing this to get a tax break. This is development that otherwise wouldn't occur without affording the tax abatement for development to occur.
So that would be something.
For example, if someone came in for abatement, if they're an existing business, the business is thriving, they came to you tomorrow and said, I'd like to have tax abatement. Well, we all would like to have tax abatement, but you don't really need it. That would be grounds to say no.
On a new improvement that they were going to do.
No,
No,
they
you
can just
come
ask
in
for it.
just
They're not doing anything to the building.
You don't have to make an improvement to ask for abatement.
Right.
It could be an existing property, you can just say, well, my business is not doing well.
Yeah, I'm gonna move unless,
I'll move if you don't give me abatement.
I thought under the statute, that would be on improvement.
that's if we just do the abatement. If we do the exemption and the abatement, right? It could be,
The exemption only applies to new improvements. And it also applies to abatements, but abatements are not limited to new improvements. It can be an existing facility.
I mean, the whole purpose of that is to generate future revenue for the township. Give somebody an exemption or an abatement now, they're going to make improvements, or they make improvements, and then, you know, in a reasonable amount of time, the township expects to get a return by increased tax revenue as a result of increased commercial business, increased residential sales. You know, the cost of the home goes up, so, you know, the tax base goes up.
And
I mean,
abatement
that's
is
the whole,
also
that's the
something
whole
that,
idea behind this. If you can't demonstrate that you're, you know, what you're doing is gonna do that, then you're not gonna be entitled to an abatement.
but what's the check against having, you know, we all decide, oh, look, it's our buddy, let's give him a tax abatement, is the only check an election? I mean, in other words, is there something built into the law that says? we have to meet the
My
following
standpoint
criteria?
is, at the end of the day, the assessor in 5
I was
years.
gonna,
is
does the
gonna
tax
come out
assessor have an
and-
appeal
and you're
process?
gonna-
Okay.
If they got it, you know, depending, remember, you're constrained by statute,
Right.
so they're constrained by statute.
Okay.
So, but at the end of the day, the assessor is going to assess full value when that abatement period is over, and the town's gonna get what it's assessed at.
So the check
My opinion
against,
is the check is at the end of the period of time, the assessor goes out and here's what it's valued at, and here's what the taxes are gonna be.
and I've included a provision that requires a cost benefit analysis.
Okay,
If
so
someone's
then-
applying for the abatement, they have to show the numbers.
will that give the assessor the ability to appeal? Like if the governing body were to say, let's give this guy an abatement, does the assessor have the ability to argue against that, or is there an ability to?
No, why would he?
No.
The
Especially, I mean, this could be years down the road, I'm just saying, like, if you're putting into place a system, I'd like to have a check against.
Wait a minute here now.
People handing out
The
taxes.
existing ordinance, does that permit this?
Well, in the redevelopment zone.
In the redevelopment zone? So it permits the abatement?
Yes, the redevelopment zones. Not, I mean, these ordinances would apply to the rehabilitation zones.
Yeah, because the village now is a rehab zone, and you have to extend it to that.
So as long as we have that cost benefit, at least there's a requirement there that there's gonna be some public documentation as to why there has to be some
You can
justification.
scrutinize the purpose of granting the abatement.
All right, so that's enough, at least there's public information.
You know, an example is you could have a commercial business that decides, you know what, this program is available to me. By entering it, I can free up enough dollars to do a facelift, make my property a little more attractive, maybe recruit. I mean, that's the intent, that is part of the intent behind
Absolutely.
the program.
But that's different than coming in because the business isn't doing well, and asking for an abatement.
Yeah, that's a different process.
Right. And it would apply to both.
And that would be up to the council to.
But in both cases, they have to provide some sort of cost-benefit
They
analysis to justify the
They can
request.
provide an analysis that shows.
That's fine. As long as there's some paper trail that the public can look up and say, you know, that there needs to be accountability for this.
Well, let me ask you this, I mean, on the abatement program. Do we have any ability legally to require the business to take the savings and use it?
No. You have to follow the statutory, when you grant the abatement, you have to follow one of the three formula for granting abatement. And
Well, one of those formulas, if someone says
Well,
they're gonna
it's
come in and
consistent with the
improve
formula,
their building.
you have to draw up an agreement. I'm sure you could add some provisions to it, but you have to follow the formula.
Well, I'm not, the formula I'm not concerned with. The point is, okay, if we did 20, 40, 60, okay, well, you're saving 80% the first year. What are you gonna do with that money?
Well, that's part of the negotiation.
I want you to
and the
plow it
abatement.
into the building.
That's part of the cost analysis.
That's. The question
I
would be
mean,
is if they
could you
say
bind them to do it?
yeah, what happens if they say they're gonna do the improvement, they get the abatement, and they
You
don't?
want to contractualize it so that you have a right to enforce it.
Okay, so that you could be.
Part of the agreement.
All right, so you can make a binding agreement that they're gonna use.
In fact, an agreement is required.
Okay. All right.
So how would the exemption work? It would be in conjunction with, see, that's.
Well, exemptions only apply, the exemption only applies to new improvements. And you're not reducing taxes. You're just saying if I make a new improvement, that new improvement, the taxes don't start for 5 years. That's.
Yeah, so the exemption only applies to new improvements. And that, if somebody comes in, is there discretion for us to grant the exemption? Is there a?
The exemption's a little more, is a little more ministerial.
They just go, there's
It
a
goes right to
process to
the
the
assessor.
assessor,
Right.
through the construction office, and it's all done administratively.
But there's still a requirement for a cost-benefit analysis.
For exemption?
I know, because it's
No.
automatic,
No,
because it's within the
flat.
rehabilitation.
Yeah, you're not,
You don't need one.
Anyone,
you're
yes.
still,
Yeah.
the exemption, you're still collecting the current tax amount of revenue from that.
So if we pass this and you live in the village area and you do up to $25,000 in improvements, you're not gonna see taxes for,
For 5 years on those, and that first.
provided you request it from the assessor.
Yes.
So that's automatic.
And if it's commercial, you're not even subject to a $25,000 threshold.
Right.
So new improvements for commercial will automatically be exempt for 5 years. Why do I need people to know?
So if we have the ordinance, if we adopt the ordinance for the abatement, do we have to implement it? Could we say, just as a matter of policy, at this time, we're not accepting applications for abatement, we're only accepting.
I think you have to accept the application, but you can do the cost analysis. If the cost analysis doesn't work, you can deny the abatement.
How long does a rehabilitation designation last? Is that permanent? Permanent until it's deemed
Until you
rehabilitated?
rescind it,
Property basis, until
Okay.
property
I would think.
is
Deemed rehabilitated.
I think the statute says it's 10 years.
10 years?
I didn't know there was a time.
No, that was.
Was that just
We never
redone?
adopted that. There is no,
I don't think there's
it's
a time.
until the property is.
At some point.
Yeah, you establish in the original designation why you're rehabilitating. And once that condition no longer exists,
There's a
then
plan.
the rehabilitation
Plan
plan.
that sets forth how the property should be rehabilitated. And once they're rehabilitated in accordance with that plan, then they're no longer.
So there's a need of some sort of an analysis, I guess, at the end of the day. That says, you know, because we know that we passed with the idea of the structural issues that are exist and empty businesses, et cetera. Who makes that designation? Does it just happen? Is it?
It's the municipality.
Okay, so we should make it sometime. All right.
Anything else?
mean, I just assume, you know, we're all in agreement in terms of, this version of the ordinance where the exemption and abatement applies to both areas. I just assume assign a number to it tonight and put it on for first reading.
Well, do you have any edits?
No.
Wow.
Sorry to disappoint.
Nice work.
I want to move this, we need to move this forward.
I think it would be 2013-11.
Yeah. Anybody have any objection to that? No? All right, so we'll amend the agenda to include that under ordinances for first reading, ordinance 2013-11. All right, next item is professional services and other services task force status. Is that your,
So I had a conversation, a conversation with Mr. Hartwig not too long ago, and he reminded me that while we, he's in the audience, holding me accountable here, that while we, you know, we did the work of the task force and really Bill Shade, and I couldn't remember Bill's last name. Phil and Jack did most of the work on the task force, but they did a great job. And along with turning up information, I know that most people know that we referred some information and asked the appropriate legal authorities to take a look at whether or not any criminal activity had taken place. There were some recommendations made by the task force to the governing body to consider some reforms. And the idea of these reforms were to put controls into place so that in the future, those controls would make sure that we wouldn't be in a situation again where we found essentially our township being run in a way that that didn't have good, appropriate accounting controls in place. I'm trying to pull up that document. It's right here. So the following recommendations were made. Right here. Basically, there were three primary areas that we looked at that we haven't acted on yet. One of them was to give our local police force the ability to enforce if there were any, if the township was being intentionally misbilled, or if activity was taking place, to allow our local enforcement by creating, adding to our ordinance things like deliberately, intentionally not billing the township per a contract, intentionally getting in the way of township employees conducting their business in a proper manner, and making those nuisance violations that could be prosecuted with, I believe it was up to $500 per incident and up to 30 days in prison for each incident of misbilling or improperly interfering with a government official or government employee doing their business. So that was one of the recommendations. Another important recommendation that Jack saw was, and I agree with this one, was to give the CFO the ability to seek an independent legal opinion. One of the things that we came across when we were looking at this is our CFO had questions about whether or not it was appropriate to award contracts in a certain way, and the legal opinion that she got, she was required to, did I give it away? I said she. Might have been Kathy. The legal opinion was from the solicitor. And in this particular incident, and I think if we look at the comptroller's report, we see that, you know, there may not have been proper controls in place. So there's a question as to whether or not this contract is a valid contract, but why are we asking that question of the person who wrote the contract? So one of the things that we felt was an important control, financial control, was to give the CFO the ability to seek an independent legal opinion on something. I think that's an important control, and again, I'd like to ask the governing body to consider that. And the last one, right? Well, one of the things that the township manager is already doing, right? And in fact, we worked on it tonight. One of the items was a report on when we issue bonds for capital expenditures, that we should have a timely report on how those expenditures are being carried out. So we issue a bond, we borrow money, but we don't really ever hear about it again. So now, one of the controls that were recommended was an annual reporting of how those capital funds have been expended in that year. And I think, given the fact that we had $3 million sitting around, that's probably...
We're trying to clean it up.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of the things that the task force recommended, I know that you've been working on. And the question is, and everyone's got this document, do we want to go through and take action? And the last one was contractor debarment, where if there's a contractor who hasn't acted in good faith, we deem in good faith that they be barred from bidding on future projects.
And again, I'll defer to Mr. Norman. The statute's clear, they don't call it debarment, but the statute is clear on how you prove negative experience. That's the statutory reference. It is very difficult, but the statute's already there. And again, I think I understand the task force wants to tie it to ordinance so that you have local control from, at least my interpretation, where this becomes a violation or a peace and good order complaint, which is a criminal. And so my suggestion was just to pull one or two of the task force members back in with one or two councils, the CFO, myself, and very quickly just go through this, any statutory concerns that I have. I'm not 100% in agreement with that. Council has certain ability to do certain things with some of what I read.
Sure.
It just may be my interpretation.
Well, that would be part of the discussion.
Yeah, and then very rapidly, let's make a deadline. By the first meeting in September, we'll be back with everything.
Right.
And this is what we're asking the governing body to act on. Amend this ordinance, do this, this can be a policy, boom, 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 we'll be done with it.
That's I mean, to the extent, I know that you're working on a lot of these things.
Yeah,
And we've seen it. I mean, we hear every meeting about.
But you also want to put protections in, because I'll put the similar protections. At the last meeting, I talked about taking the policy decisions on non-union and making them an ordinance. Because right now, the town managers have been changing that with little advice and consent of the governing body. And so those things, because I believe they're tied to budgetary policy, you should have, say, an formal oversight over. And so, there's things where I'm going to put up that manager authority wall, but there are things I'm trying to put controls in so that those things that have happened in the past, because there are a lot of benefit structures that were changed without the governing body having any knowledge of, that put liability on us. One of them was the comp time thing we discussed with some of the non-union. That put liability on the township. The governing body didn't know it, but it's required under the budget to show that liability. So, yeah, I want to have that opportunity to kind of go through what we've been doing, what's in place, what's not in place, what council.
So, all right, so what you're looking at is, for your first point, the penalties, whatever you want to call it. We need to know.
Well, I think what manager recommended, what I think is a good idea, is maybe looking at forming a subcommittee of the governing body.
I think it's a good idea because there's,
along with a former member of
the
the task
prior
force,
bad
Larry.
experience provision with the contract, there's already a state law there. There's also provisions in the Faulkner Act that deal with certain of these issues. And if we go astray from the Faulkner Act, any ordinance you pass may not be valid anyway.
Right.
All right, so-
Seek the manager's guidance on it.
Insofar as the subcommittee, we reconstituted that task force. We extended that.
Wow,
I'm just simply saying, two of you on your time come in and meet with the two staff members and one of the former task force
There you go.
members. Just to consult.
See where you can do something.
right, just talk about what's
And
appropriate.
then come back by the first meeting in September or sooner. Here's where we're at.
So,
Just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Mr. Hardwick, would you be available for that?
Yes, as long, we do have a deadline, right?
Yes, September, first meeting in September.
As long as there's a deadline, I have the time.
Deadlines are
I nominate you. And as long as the township still has Kit Kat bars.
No, you switched that food, sorry. You have to pay for those Kit Kats.
Your cod is still there, as I understand.
All right, so, I mean, we just essentially reconstituted, you and I and Jack.
Jack, we can deal with. Yeah.
Are you okay with that? Okay?
I'll email everybody and get that scheduled.
Okay.
Well, we still got till September 1st.
Well, no, we have to form the subcommittee.
Oh, to form the subcommittee?
I really
They
don't,
were
I
the
don't think so.
subcommittee.
Huh?
They were the subcommittee,
You
part
were
of the
the
task
subcommittee,
force, they're not
so
changing
you're still-
members.
All right, we need to we've already reconstituted.
You've already reconstituted.
All right, so we're good.
You want to re-reconstitute.
Yeah, it's just an internal meeting to kind of.
That's fine. All right.
That's
Just
it.
set it up.
All right, good.
Yep.
All right. Anything else? All right. Any other discussion items? No? Okay, all right, so next item on the agenda is public comments. Anybody having any business for the council, please step forward. State your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Ellicott, 15 Hiawatha Trail, Medford Lakes.
Good evening.
I started volunteering with Medford Township Fire Division in 1996. After graduating from fire school, I quickly was put in charge of the junior firefighter program. Not long after that, I was promoted to fire lieutenant. In 2003, I was offered a position as career firefighter, fire inspector, EMT. During my tenure with Medford Township, I managed the community emergency response team and became one of the township's deputy emergency management coordinators. I've received a life-saving medal and 2 CPR saves from Medford Township. For 23 years, I have also served as a United States Marine. I've deployed to combat areas on 5 different occasions. 2 battles, the Battle of Al Nazaria and the Battle of Fallujah, saw some of the heaviest fighting since the battle for Way City in Vietnam. I received medals for valor during both those battles. In 2010, I started a 501c3 to help rehabilitate wounded warriors, and I continue to work almost 30 hours a week helping our veterans. I sit on the New Jersey State Commission for Traumatic Brain Injuries. I belong to the Medford Township Returning Veterans Committee. I'm a trustee for the Medford Township's Wounded in Action, Killed in Action 5K Run, and I have sat on the Burlington County Military Veterans Advisory Board. I've dedicated my life to the service of this great nation, the state of New Jersey, Burlington County, and Medford Township. In December of 2010, while performing my duties as a career firefighter at EMT, I responded to a cardiac arrest call. While moving a 300-plus-pound patient from a backboard to a stretcher, I injured my back. I went to see the township's workman's comp doctor, and eventually, after almost 2 years of physical therapy, walking with a cane, the doctors performed a discectomy and lapidectomy, basically a spinal fusion. I now live with 2 steel rods, 4 screws, and a steel cage in my back. In April 2012, the township's workman's comp doctor told me I had met my maximum medical improvement and never again be a firefighter. Prior to my surgery, in April of 2011, while still on workman's comp, I was laid off from my duties due to Medford Township's financial hardship. I continued to communicate with the township's manager's assistant for any workman's comp issues that arose and found her to be helpful with much of that process. The acting township manager informed me that any other personnel issues should be routed through my chain of command and not speak directly with his assistants about these issues, which at the time made sense because we were dealing with a lot of layoffs and she had a lot on her plate at the time. So So I communicated with my chain of command during the entire process. And I was informed by my shop steward that the township had submitted an involuntary application for disability retirement on my behalf. Last year, my shop steward informed me that the application was never filed. I immediately filed an application and it was denied because I no longer had a working relationship with Medford Township. But had it been filed by April of 2012, it would have been reviewed by the pension board for a decision. The New Jersey State Pension Board informed me that it basically was an administrative error. And all that needed to be done for me to be returned to the employment roster and placed on a non-paid sick leave for a short period of time. This would allow me to pursue my application for disability retirement at no expense to the township. I'm not asking for Medford Township to approve or deny my pension application. It's not our job. It's not my job, it's not the township's job. I'm simply asking for the ability to apply and let my application stand on its own merit. My initial request for reinstatement was denied by Mr. Schultz, and he advised me that perhaps I should retain counsel to help facilitate the request. I sought advice from an attorney, as Mr. Schultz advised, simply to help me draft a letter to the governing body. I am not now, nor have I ever sought litigation against Medford Township. I know that the council has met during an executive session to discuss this in the past, but I have not received any type of notice of any kind of decision that was made. I stand before you today because recently I requested an audience with the council during an executive session, which was denied. So I'm standing in front of you today to humbly ask to be reinstated, and I'd like to know what the opinion of the governing body is.
I'm going to stop right now. This is a Faulkner Act community. The governing body does not control personnel. Mr. Ellicott, I disagree with some of your allegations. I'm happy to provide other documentation. First of all,
Can I quote some of your letters?
I'm not going to debate this here. I did not advise you to get counsel, okay? If you want to go back in time, I'm happy to publicly do that. From the day you came in with a case settlement from another public entity saying, if you don't do this, I'm going to go this route, okay? So
That's an absolute outright lie.
let's get the record straight.
And let's not.
All right, let me go through.
Nothing has been done.
Let me go
My
through this,
integrity will stand intact, sir.
Okay, so you're asking the township to circumvent the pension laws and regulations. I've asked if pension will provide me a letter that states exactly what they're saying the town can do. Because we have other employees in similar position that you're asking for that
So
we
you
will
don't
have
want
to
to set
replace.
precedents, is that what you're saying?
I'm saying, I don't believe, and our labor attorney doesn't believe, there's authority for me to make that call. Your issue is with the pension board of the state of New Jersey, not the township of
I
Medford.
provided you with the email from the pension board.
I want a
Exactly.
formal letter from pension, and they will not do that. I've been doing this for 17 years, I know they will not provide that letter.
Is that what you're asking?
If you will get me a letter, I will
I
happily
got
come.
your email.
I want a formal letter from the pension bureau, not one of their staff.
I'm asking for the council as a governing body.
That's a violation of the act.
You are the people that were elected.
We're not, he's correct, okay? He's in charge of personnel. We are not. That is his area.
So you have no opinion on it.
We have no
It's not-
authority.
We have no authority to act.
We set policy.
And
He's
the
in charge
only,
of personnel.
and so the record's clear, the executive session was to advise of a potential litigation, because that was, we talked about that. You know what?
No, the executive session, and I have an email right here, you'd like me to read back to you.
What are you talking about? No, I don't, at this point in time, because I'm gonna go back and double check everything. And I'm happy to have that discussion again with you. I went out of my
Do the
way,
right thing, Mr. Schultz.
the right thing.
Do the right thing.
This town did the right thing, and employees have gotten
The
this stuff on behalf of the
township
town.
told me, an employee of the township, I was told to
And
act.
I'm not gonna
to act-
debate it here.
Yeah.
Your
Where would you
factors,
like to debate, Mr. Schultz? I've asked you for meetings that you've denied me. Where do you want to debate it? It shouldn't
Denied
be
you.
debated in front of these people.
Denied you? I didn't meet with you? Tell the public, did I meet with
Yes,
you?
ma'am.
Did I return your calls to my cell phone on personal time? Did I not return any?
Yes, you did.
So please, let's characterize that I spent 6 to 8 months reviewing this. Did I not? Did I not?
It took about 6 to 8 months for you to get me an answer back.
I reviewed it 6 to 8 months before I'm going to make a decision that it could be fraudulent. I'm not going there. If the state of New Jersey Pension Bureau is going to tell me I can circumvent their rules and regulations, I will do it, and I always told you that. Did I not tell you that? You have not.
You told me that
You had that commissioner send me a
Your
letter.
exact words were, "I don't want to bring you back and set a precedence for other employees."
That's true, I have 2 other employees
Well,
that are
you
going
want
to
to set a
have
precedent.
2 former
Set a
employees.
precedence of doing the right
No.
thing.
We don't need to debate this here. Okay?
Where are we, where can we debate it?
We do need to debate.
Where can we debate it?
We're not gonna debate it here, okay? This is a meeting to get business done. If you have an issue.
This is business.
Okay, well then that business has to be dealt with
It's the
with the
same
manager.
stuff, I'm sorry. This
Okay.
is,
You told me not to take it personally.
You
It's
are.
hard not to take it
You are
personally
taking it personally.
when I have to count change to buy groceries for
Look.
my kids.
Kevin, I didn't lay you off, okay? I'm sorry that, and I told you that. But you're asking the township manager to do something that I don't believe I have the authority. I have 2 attorney opinions to that. You hired an attorney, or you didn't hire an attorney, you provided an attorney letter that stated a case in which we disputed. Our attorney talked to your attorney.
No, he never returned his phone call.
Well, then, I'm
He
sorry.
never
your attorney-
returned his phone
Well,
call.
I'm-
Nobody's ever gotten back in touch with me. You just let me hang in the wind.
You had an attorney send a letter. At that point, we're adversarial, just like we are right now. My job is to protect this governing body, because you went into an adversarial role when you got the decision that you didn't like.
Do you think
Okay. So
that
I'm not-
if the township had done their job,
Who did you complain to when you came to me didn't do their job? Your union, and then
No,
District,
no.
District 8
All right.
legislative office called the other day.
Enough.
The union.
Okay.
You know what?
He
I'm
was a
sorry.
union representative that laid me
I'm
off.
not gonna be called out for stuff that's not accurate. I'm sorry. I'm gonna defend it just as I've defended
Let this
everything
go
since
on
I've been in this town. And to try to clean up.
It
some of
hasn't
this
gone
stuff.
long enough. It's going to continue.
I disagree.
That's fine, you have
Okay?
whatever.
And
right you
it's
have to take.
influences like this that are keeping this town this way.
All right, Chris, no.
Start by setting the precedence of doing something right for a change.
Mr.
Going the wrong way for
I'm
long
happy to
enough.
set the agendas correct for a lot of things in personnel matters if I had the ability to, because it would clearly send a message to the people. But I'm barred by that, and you know that.
Okay, enough. Okay. Anyone else in the public care to make any comments? Please step forward.
My name is Cassandra Will. I'm from 110 Welcome Trail, Medford Lakes. I have nothing to do with this town other than the shopping and the money that comes out of my taxes for the things that are in here. But one thing I heard, and I know it for a fact, I heard you say, I heard him read, that an employee of this township did not get the paperwork in on time. Not them, the employee. Was she or he fired?
I don't know that I agree with that, man.
Oh, you don't agree with that?
I was not here at that point in time,
You've
so.
got a guy up there that could have been killed a dozen times. He's got 2 little children, and everybody in our town, in half of New Jersey, know him. And I cannot believe that you could all sit there and look at him and say that and go to bed at night to sleep.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Please step forward.
My name is Eileen Elcott, 179 Continental Trail, Medford Lakes. I don't know what to say. I'm not good at this. I say, who is going to stick up for him? Who's going to help him? When, just like Mrs. Wilkes said, the paperwork was not put in on time. And Kevin wasn't told that it wasn't put in on time. He had no control over that.
Okay, and that's his representation, and I have my manager telling me that that's not necessarily the case. Okay, so what am I supposed to do?
I provided emails to the fact that
You got a guy up there who swears in
Okay,
behind his
we don't
head.
need, okay, if you want to speak, come up to the microphone, okay?
It's not funny.
Ma'am, no, I'm
It's not
smirking
funny.
because people do not know that I served in the military as well. So when you're gonna make comments like that, please know who you're talking about. Thank you. That's all I'm asking.
No, I'm commenting on you
No.
laughing about something.
I'm not, I didn't laugh. I smirked because somebody made a comment about the Constitution. Believe me, I have to uphold the same
With
thing.
regards to the meeting and the governing body, what I think is being lost here, we're very limited. First of all, what I'm hearing, when I listen to this, okay, I'm hearing unfortunate remnants of a township that wasn't being run properly. We didn't have a professional manager in place at the time. And frankly, what I see in my review and my evaluation of Mr. Schultz is somebody who cares deeply about his employees. He cares deeply about his town. He conducts himself in a professional manner. I don't know of anybody who's had difficulty in either reaching Mr. Schultz, getting a return phone call. I get feedback all the time. Well, hold on a second. I think that there's a misunderstanding of what our capabilities are. Here's what we can do. Let me just explain what we can do. We can write laws and we can set policy. I literally, if I were to say to Mr. Schultz, I want you to do this in this case, I'm committing a crime. So are you asking me to commit a crime?
Of course not.
Well, that's
I'm asking
the
for
limit that
somebody
we face. But no, literally, for me to weigh in on this, for me to even express an opinion on this, and to get involved in any way, shape, or form is literally for me to commit a crime. It is against the law in the state of New Jersey. We are a nation of laws, and I have to follow them. So it's an appealing story, believe me, listening to it, sure. Okay? But the point is, personnel matters are under the purview of the manager. This manager has my confidence. That's as far as I can go. I think Chris Schultz has done a great job, and he has come into a situation that was in an incredible state of disarray. And that's what I have here to weigh. And I appreciate the circumstances that you face and that your family's facing. And there's certainly, but understand that we can't do anything about it without committing a crime.
whatever you're telling me that you can or cannot do, it's not fair. It's not fair. And there should be some fairness for him. There should be. And I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to get that. But I know that somebody can do something and somebody should do something. Because it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair to lay somebody off 3 months before they're vested. I mean, that's a dirty trick. Even no matter how you want to look at it. That's all I have to say.
I have pursued with the most vigor I can a reconciling for what was done to this town. Not just to the taxpayers, but to the employees who had to often, in many cases, pay the price because of
No, you
mismanagement.
don't pay the price, he pays the price.
I understand that, but I'm here to fix that problem.
Well, then, fix it.
We've
Can you
fixed
fix
quite a
it?
bit at this point, but there's nothing I can do with personnel matters.
You know what?
You just,
I'm gonna regret doing this because it always comes back to bite me. Kevin, be in my office tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. You and I will go to pension because I have no idea what you told pension. I'm happy to have the discussion with pension, with a copy of this tape and everything else we have. And if pension tells me, forget it. I'm happy to do it. I've always said that, Kevin. I had to be comfortable in my decision making. I'm not gonna be bullied into it, but I am. I'm gonna go again and take another step of making this happen.
I'll be there at 9 o'clock.
Be there at 9 o'clock.
Talk number to the
And
council.
I'm happy to schedule a meeting, and I will go with you, because it does have precedent, and it's not just for you, and we explain that. And I am upset,
So am I.
because you were upfront with me, or I thought you were until now, the whole process, and I feel like I just got, well,
That's why I initially asked for an executive session.
but that's a lie. I got it.
We can't
So
do that.
be there tomorrow, 9 o'clock.
Thank you.
That's all I'm gonna do right
Thank you.
now, and I'm saying that publicly.
All right. Anyone else? Please step forward.
Fortunary Tavistock Drive. Kevin Ellicott, thank you for your service to the country. Thank you for your service to the town. Okay, I hope it all gets resolved. That's just public acknowledgement. He was a good employee, dedicated employee, and I think he deserves every resolution that he can get in this to provide for him and his family. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
thank you. Anyone else? Please.
Yeah, Joe Nyla, the office. 38 South Main Street. But anyway, what I'm asking about is the size of the commercial properties on Route 70. If you could eliminate that. Eliminate that size.
That is something that I would like to.
I have it on, I have a laundry list of things.
But I think that's important to do even before you get this liquor license thing together, because that could go hand in hand with that. I think it's important to do that.
No, I think that's something that needs.
Because you might be able to get more money for that liquor license if that size restriction was taken care of.
Thank you for, look, I honestly think that restriction was put on there for the wrong reasons, as I look back on it.
Council, I know council's talked about this. Do you just want to go back to the previous version?
Yeah, I would like to.
Because we can amend that fairly quick.
Yeah.
We can.
I think that's an excellent suggestion.
You know the ordinance? You know what it was?
No.
All right, we just have to repeal the change.
Okay.
Well, we'll bring it up for discussion.
No, I think we can do it. but just-
Put it on the ordinance and see if we want to introduce it or not.
Yes. Just put it on for first read.
That would be great, yeah.
Thanks for the.
Especially with the liquor license coming up. The other thing is, I read a lot on Facebook. I shouldn't do that, but anyway. But certain individuals are saying the town isn't safe, and I've read things that Medford is one of the safest communities in Burlington County. They've been voted for that, and I'd just like to ask the chief, are we having a crisis with crime in the town, or? I hear it from, actually, I'm hearing it from one of your employees' father, and it's like he's getting inside information.
Really easy. I mean, there's a couple issues. I think I've been very clear over the last 2 years on where I think our police staffing level should be. And clearly, I've stated in every meeting, and any time I've been at, I don't think we have the proper staffing level.
Okay.
I don't think I could be any clearer.
Currently,
Currently, right now, we're having residential burglaries, we've had recent commercial burglaries, we've had an onslaught over the past week in criminal mischief complaints, and we're doing the very best we can with that. But the question becomes, how many people do we need? You just asked me that question.
Right.
I've been very clear, we are understaffed.
I
In my opinion, we need anywhere between 35 and 40 police officers to properly do what we're doing. The officers are working extremely hard under very difficult circumstances to try and do the very best we can for you. That's my opinion, and I've been very clear over the past 2 years, time and time again.
Yeah, well, that's an excellent thing. You're the one that's working it, you're the one that's taking care of the town. And if they do need, if he needs 35 more officers or more officers and 40 officers, then you guys have to start looking into that. If we're having a crime rate.
Yeah, and we're trying to communicate that. I mean, we posted in the past month, the residential burglaries, we put on Facebook, we put on our website, we communicated with the homeowners alliances to get that information out. And last week we did the same thing with these residential burglaries, or with the criminal mischiefs. We're trying to get the communication and trying to get the information out to the residents so they can be our eyes and ears out there and report these things to us. But again, we're doing our best in trying to get the information out to everybody in town so they're aware of what's going on as well.
I know the budget problems that we have, but this also affects any commercial businesses that would come into town if it's perceived that we have a problem with crime. So I think you guys should start looking into that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
If not, motion to close the public portion.
So moved.
Thank you, Annie. second?
Second.
Thank you, Chris. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the bill list from June 19th, 2013, June 28th, 2013, and July 2nd, 2013. Anybody have any questions with regard to the bill list? Any questions answered? Okay, if not, do I have a motion to approve the bill list from June 19th, 2013, June 28th, 2013, and July 2nd, 2013?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Chris. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have no ordinances for second reading, we have ordinance for first reading. Let's see here. Do I have a motion for ordinance 2013-10?
I make a motion that ordinance 2013-10 regulating smoking in and upon public buildings and public properties and enacting chapter 126 of the Code of the Township of Medford entitled Smoking to accomplish same. Be introduced for first reading.
Thank you, Randy. Do I have a second? It's a second. Thank you, Chuck. I will set the date for public hearing for August 6th, 2013. Any comments from council?
Yeah, I had a couple of comments. Optional smoking areas shall be designated. Currently, the ordinance reads that optional smoking areas may be designated. It should not be a matter of may be at the manager's discretion. It should read shall be. We're not going to eliminate smoking outdoors in Medford Township. That's not the purpose of this ordinance. And as it stands right now, barring the manager designating those areas, the assumption is we just eliminated smoking outdoors. So, granted it's for first reading, I'm not certain if that's a material change. I mean, that's housekeeping, is it not?
This is just on the introduction anyway.
Right. So, I mean, that's a quick and easy fix. And I'm sure that as we go through the process on this ordinance, there's going to be quite a bit of discussion in regards to what constitutes the legitimate function of government, et cetera, et cetera. And without getting into it again, I just want it clear from my perspective that we're not eliminating smoking outdoors in Medford Township. That's not what we're doing.
I'd actually like to see this done exactly the opposite. I mean, first of all, I don't agree with the resolution, with the ordinance we came with, you're gonna make that pretty clear. But I'm probably the minority on this governing body, and possibly the township. We have an ordinance that basically says you can't smoke anywhere unless there's a sign saying you can. Wouldn't it be more appropriate if the goal is to really eliminate smoking in dense populated areas? And we're basically saying athletic fields, playgrounds, things like that. Wouldn't it be more appropriate to create the ordinance where we can deem certain areas to be not smoking, instead of saying you can't smoke anywhere? Because granted, with Mr. Wagner's conversations about mitigating risks, he probably hazards we're talking about, would say, yeah, but I understand there's potential risks there, but from my perspective, somebody who is, in the park somewhere, smoking a cigar, a cigarette, or whatever, a pipe, and someone sees him from across the field, can have a connection, right? Can point the finger and say, I don't like what you're doing. I would argue that's ruining business. But from my perspective, I think it's a little intrusive to say to that person across the field, you can't do that there, and there's nobody around. And I would rather see something that says, we're gonna designate the non-smoking areas and confine those areas to the densely populated areas. That's my thought, I'd like to see it changed that way. I have no interest in telling people what they can and can't do, you know, it's stupid.
Well, but the goal here is, with the ordinance, is to designate a buffer around, and the manager and I discussed this. Put a buffer around those areas that we think where smoking should be prohibited.
So why don't we just confine the ordinance to those areas?
And everything else, because I think that doing that, you set yourself up for a trap. This allows more flexibility in terms of, it's banned unless I say it isn't.
Well, and again, back to what I said, I agree, it's banned unless you're in the designated area. There has to be.
But the designated area here in this case, for instance, if we take Freedom Park, you know, you put a buffer around the children's areas, and possibly, you know, the basketball courts and whatnot. Everywhere else in that park, you're gonna be able to smoke if you want to.
But don't feel have to be designated, correct, the way this is written?
As a smoking area.
I read it as, right now, it's my discretion. You know, council's gonna go back into this, with some of these suggestions. I personally, the council make the policy decision, and just be done with it. I think we need to be flexible, and we have to have the ability to do things, which is what I thought we were trying to accomplish. The more shall means there's no flexibility, it's going to be done in that manner, but, and then each time I gotta come back to make a change. And that's just from a practical standpoint, it's just operationally, it's going to be difficult. So, what the mayor and I did discuss today is my thought process is to put buffers around play areas, and you can't smoke into that buffer.
Well, if that's the intent of the ordinance, I find that.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I mean, I think the way it's drafted allows some flexibility. For instance, we have an event in the park. I don't think there should be any smoking.
There shouldn't be any smoking.
Okay.
And you have an
And
event
it
like
gives,
the fireworks?
yeah, it gives them the
There should be
authority
no
to rescind that. If we put it in the ordinance, well, I can't really rescind it.
Because
I gotta change the ordinance, okay? But he has the ability to rescind it by policy, just to issue an order, rescinding the buffer everywhere is not.
From this event, from this
For this
hour to
event.
that hour.
You know, for so many days, you know, while it's going on.
Or, you know,
Just so I understand.
I suggest those
Are you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager, are you both saying that you prefer to leave the word may in the first, as opposed to shall?
my opinion is yes, that gives me the ability, what if, you know, like I said, what if we have an event just on a day-to-day basis that's in the gazebo, or the pavilions, and I decide for that event, they ask, and I say, okay, I agree, we'll extend it today just for that area. You know, that gives me that flexibility. Right now, depending on what the shall is, and I have to designate areas. And they're the areas, and that's it. There's no flexibility. That would be the area.
Makes sense to me.
So, you know, I'm happy to, like I said, once the ordinance is in place, you know, go out there and assess the area and look for more appropriate places. But my park is so big, my attitude was just what the original intent was, is to keep it around, away from where the kids are active. The playground, tot lot, basketball, skate park. You know, if you're gonna do it, you gotta be over in that area. That's kind of how that's how it operationally worked in another county that I shared that with. We just set designated spots, and that was it. So we were able to manage that as things changed over the rest.
It all may become moot very soon anyway.
Probably.
You could have your vote.
Well, I'm saying, it all may become moot because it's their state law.
That's the state
that's
law, the state's gonna, that's coming out.
passed. The state's gonna trump us and say that you can't use it in
You can't, any green space.
any green space.
Yeah.
Public buildings. You can't do it in public buildings anyway.
Right.
Okay.
All right, so, all right, I need a roll call vote for approval of ordinance 2013-10 on first reading.
Mr. Beanstalk?
Aye.
Mr. Pace?
Aye.
Mr. Watson?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Bonney?
No.
Mayor Check Eye.
Aye. Passes. All right, next item is ordinance 2013-11. Do I have a motion for ordinance 2013-11 on first reading?
I'll make a motion to approve on first reading ordinance 2013-11, an ordinance of the Township Council of Medford Township amending and supplementing section 131-1 and set of the Medford Township Code for the implementation of 5-year tax exemption and abatement for designated rehabilitation areas and redevelopment areas pursuant to NJSA 48:21-1 et sec.
All right, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Randy. All right, set the date for public hearing, August 6, 2013. Any council comments? I think we discussed it. Huh?
We have plenty.
Yeah, we have plenty. So, nothing further. A roll call vote for approval of 2013-11 on first reading.
Mr. Beanstalk?
Aye.
Mr. Pace?
Aye.
Mr. Watson?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Bonney?
Aye.
Mayor Check Eye.
Ordinance passes. And so, next item on the agenda is consent agenda resolutions. We don't have any corrections or anything to these tonight. We're not pulling. Anybody have any issues with any, all right, so, resolution 117-2013, amending the Township of Medford 2013 year municipal budget by the insertion of a special item of revenue and appropriation from the state of New Jersey drunk driving enforcement fund grant. Resolution 118-2013, authorizing award of contract to Hainesport Enterprises, Inc. for public safety vehicle maintenance. Resolution 119-2013, authorizing refund of 2013 tax overpayment, block 2204, lot 25, 40 Ohio Trail. Resolution 120-2013, authorizing refund of 2013 tax overpayment, block 403.01, lot 45, 11 Montclair Road. Resolution 121-2013, authorizing refund of 2013 tax overpayment, block 2701.01, lot 32, 124 Himline Road. Resolution 122-2013, authorizing refund of 2012 tax overpayment, block 5101.01, lot 1, 1303 Stokes Road. Resolution 123-2013, authorizing refund of 2012 tax overpayment, block 5301.01, lot 13 Small Road. Resolution 124-2013, authorizing refund of 2012 tax overpayment, block 4806, lot 8 Tuckerton Road. Resolution 125-2013, authorizing refund of 2012 tax overpayment, block 202, lot 4.02, 37 Ark Road, and block 202, lot 4.03, 35 Ark Road. Resolution 126-2013, place-to-place transfer for Taunton Forge Liquors LLC, that's a liquor license transfer. Resolution 127-2013, amending the Township of Medford 2013 municipal budget by the insertion of a special item of revenue and appropriation from the County of Burlington 2013 Municipal Alliance Grant. Resolution 128-2013, amending the Township of Medford 2013 municipal budget by the insertion of a special item of revenue and appropriation from the Medford Township Board of Education and the Lenape Regional High School District for the 2013 Municipal Alliance Grant. Resolution 129-2013, authorizing refund of 2013 tax overpayment, block 5506.02, lot 12 Jackson Road, block 5507.06, lot 20, 6 Astor Court, block 6501.08, lot 41 Jackson and Cliff Swallow, block 6501.08, lot 44 Jackson Road. Resolution 130-2013, authorizing refund of 2013 tax overpayment, block 404.21, lot 3, 6 Inverness Drive. Resolution 131-2013, authorizing refund of 2013 tax overpayment, block 2204, lot 6, 31 Illinois Trail. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda resolutions?
So moved.
Thank you, Randy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Resolutions are approved. All right, last item here is executive session, resolution ES 07-16-2013. Matters relating to litigation negotiations and attorney-client privilege, Vineland Branch Library. Matters relating to contract negotiations and attorney-client privilege relating to the Office of State Comptroller. Matters relating to litigation negotiations and attorney-client privilege, shared services. Matters relating to collective bargaining and or employment relationship, police chief agreement. Matters relating to litigation negotiations and attorney-client privilege, Metro Park Spillway. Matters relating to collective bargaining and or the employment relationship, Metro Township Police Officers Association. Do I have a motion for resolution ES 07-16-2013?
So moved.
Thank you, Randy. Do I have a
Second.
All right, thank you, Chuck. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. How long do you think we'll be, Chris?